The darkness had been complete for 3,000 years. In the cold emptiness of space, the massive human warship Indomitable Dawn drifted silently between dead stars. Its hull, once gleaming white and gold, now bore the scars of countless micrometeorite impacts. Ice crystals covered the observation windows like frozen tears. Deep inside the ship's core, something stirred. A single red light blinked to life in the central computer room. Then another. Soon, dozens of lights began flashing as ancient systems slowly came back online. The ship's artificial intelligence, dormant for millennia, began its careful awakening. "Process. Emergency protocols activated," spoke a calm male voice through empty corridors. The AI had been programmed with the voice patterns of Commander Hyun-woo, a man who died long before the ship entered its final sleep. Beginning crew revival sequence. Estimated time to full awakening, 4 hours, 37 minutes. In the medical bay, frost began melting from the stasis pods. Of the original 2,000 crew members, only 12 pods still showed green lights. The others had failed over the centuries, their occupants lost to the long sleep that became eternal rest. The first pod to open belonged to Captain Taemin. Steam hissed out as the lid slowly lifted. Inside, a man in his mid-40s gasped his first breath in 3,000 years. His dark hair was now streaked with premature gray, a side effect of extended stasis. His weathered face showed the lines of someone who had seen too many battles. Taemin's eyes opened slowly. Everything hurt. His muscles felt like they were made of lead, and his mouth was drier than desert sand. He tried to sit up but fell back down, coughing violently. The revival drugs flowing through his system made his head spin. "Captain," the AI's voice said gently, "please remain still. Your body needs time to adjust." "How long?" Taemin croaked, his voice barely a whisper. 3,047 years, 6 months, 12 days. Taemin closed his eyes. He had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a punch to his chest. Everything he had known was gone. Everyone he had loved was dust. He was a ghost from the past, awakening in a universe that had moved on without him. But he was still a captain. His crew needed him. 20 minutes later, Taemin managed to stand. His legs shook, but he forced himself to walk. The corridors of the Indomitable Dawn were exactly as he remembered them, except for the thick layer of dust and the silence. No voices, no footsteps, no humming of busy activity. Just the low drone of life support systems working to heat air that had been frozen for centuries. He made his way to the other working stasis pods. The second to wake was Chief Engineer So Young, a woman in her 30s with short black hair and intense eyes. She had always been the smartest person on the ship, able to fix anything and improve everything she touched. When she sat up in her pod, she immediately started asking questions. "Ship status?" she demanded, even before fully opening her eyes. "Unknown," Taemin replied. "We just woke up. Power levels, hull integrity, weapon systems." "So Young," Taemin said firmly. "Breathe first, questions later. Navigator Ki Young." Woke up third. He was a quiet man with gentle eyes and steady hands. Unlike the others, he didn't speak immediately. He simply sat in his pod looking around at the medical bay with a sad expression. Ki Young had always been the most sensitive of the senior crew, and Taemin could see that the reality of their situation was hitting him hard. The last of the senior staff to wake was Dr. Hae-won. She was older than the others, with gray streaks in her long hair that had nothing to do with stasis side effects. She had been the ship's chief medical officer and had volunteered to enter stasis last, making sure everyone else was safe before sleeping herself. When she woke up and saw how few pods had green lights, she began crying silently. "Only 12, she whispered. "Out of 2,000, only 12. The other 8 crew members were younger officers and specialists. They woke up confused and frightened, looking to their superiors for answers that nobody had. Once everyone was awake and had basic medical checks, they gathered in the ship's main conference room. The large windows showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. Taemin had hoped to see something familiar, but the star patterns had changed over the millennia. They were lost in time and space. "Ship status report," Taemin ordered. Engineer So Young activated the main display. Numbers and diagrams filled the air above the conference table. Main power at 60%. Hull integrity is 92%. Life support is stable. However, most weapon systems are offline and our faster-than-light engines need major repairs. "How major?" Taemin asked. "Give me a month and I can get us moving again. Give me 3 months and I can get our weapons back online." Navigator Ki Young spoke up quietly. "Captain, I've been checking our position. We're not where we're supposed to be." "What do you mean?" "When we entered stasis, we were in the Proxima system, near the edge of human space. Now we're somewhere else. The stars don't match any of our charts." Dr. Haewon leaned forward. "Could we have drifted? For 3,000 years? Maybe. But this far?" Kai Young shook his head. "Something must have moved us." A chill went through the room. If something had moved their ship while they slept, it meant they weren't alone in the universe. But who would move a human warship? And why? Engineer So Young brought up another display. "I'm detecting some kind of automated beacon about 2 light hours away. It's not human technology." "Alien?" one of the younger officers asked nervously. "Has to be," So Young replied. "The signal pattern is completely unknown." Captain Taemin stood up and walked to the windows. Somewhere out there in the darkness were answers to questions he wasn't sure he wanted to ask. What had happened to humanity? Why had they never been rescued? Were there other humans still alive, or were the 12 people in this room the last of their kind? "So Young, how long until we can move?" "Basic engine power in 72 hours. Full faster-than-light capability in 4 weeks." "Do it." "Kai Young, I want you to study that alien beacon. Try to figure out what it's saying." "And if it's hostile?" Dr. Haewon asked. Taemin turned back to face his crew. These 11 people were all he had left. They were tired, confused, and scared. But they were human, and humans didn't give up easily. Then we remind the universe why human warships were once feared across the galaxy. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. So Young and her team worked around the clock to repair the engines. Ki Young studied the alien beacon, learning that it was indeed a signal meant for spaceships, though he couldn't understand what it was saying. Dr. Haewon took care of the crew's health, making sure everyone was adjusting well to being awake after such a long sleep, but it was on the 4th day that they got their first real shock. "Captain," Ki Young called from his navigation station, "you need to see this." Taemin hurried to the bridge, where Ki Young was staring at a long-range sensor display. In the distance, moving slowly toward them, was a fleet of alien ships. They were unlike anything in human records, sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to flow through space like living creatures. "How many?" Taemin asked. 12 ships. They're not military vessels, but they're big. And Captain..." Ki Young looked up with worried eyes. "They're heading straight for us." "Time until they arrive?" 6 hours. Taemin nodded calmly, though his heart was racing. After 3,000 years of sleep, humanity was about to meet its neighbors. He just hoped they were friendly neighbors. "Wake everyone up," he ordered. "Get So Young to push the engines harder, and send out a signal on all frequencies. Tell them we're human, we're peaceful, and we want to talk." As the alien fleet grew larger on their screens, Captain Taemin couldn't help but wonder, in a universe that had moved on without humanity for 3 millennia, would these aliens see them as friends, enemies, or simply ghosts from a forgotten past? The indomitable dawn had awakened to find itself alone in a strange new galaxy, but Captain Taemin and his crew were still human, and humans had never backed down from a challenge. The real adventure was just beginning. The alien fleet arrived exactly when Navigator Ki Young had predicted. 12 strange ships hung in space before the indomitable dawn, their hulls gleaming with an oily rainbow sheen that hurt human eyes to look at directly. They were beautiful, in an alien way, but also deeply unsettling. Captain Taemin stood on the bridge watching the alien vessels through the main viewing screen. His crew was at battle stations, though their weapons were still mostly offline. Engineer So Young had managed to get basic shields and one laser cannon working, but against 12 unknown ships, it wouldn't be much help. Any response to our signals? Taemin asked. Nothing, replied Communications Officer Jae-ho, one of the younger crew members who had survived stasis. They're not answering on any frequency we know. They're scanning us, reported Ki Young from his station. Very thorough scans. They're learning everything about our ship. Suddenly, the main screen flickered. An alien face appeared, and several crew members gasped in surprise. The being looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird, with scales that shifted color in the light and large, intelligent eyes. When it spoke, its voice was translated by some kind of universal device. Unknown vessel, you will identify yourself immediately. This is Admiral Vorthak of the Saurian Third Fleet. You are in violation of Coalition space. Taemin stepped forward. This is Captain Taemin of the human vessel Indomitable Dawn. We mean no harm. We are explorers, seeking information about the current state of the galaxy. The alien's eyes widened with what looked like shock. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Admiral Vorthak began speaking rapidly to someone off-screen in his own language. Taemin could hear other voices responding, all sounding excited and alarmed. Finally, the Admiral looked back at the screen. Did you say human? Yes. Is there a problem with that? Impossible, Vorthak hissed. Humans have been extinct for over 2,000 years. You must be using stolen technology, or this is some kind of trick. Now it was Taemin's turn to be shocked. Extinct? What do you mean extinct? The human plague died out long ago. Their colonies went silent. Their ships stopped flying. The galaxy is better for it. The Admiral's scales darkened to an angry red color. Whoever you are, whatever species you really belong to, you will surrender immediately for questioning. Dr. Hae-won stepped up beside Taemin. We are human, she said firmly. We have been in deep stasis for 3,000 years. When we went to sleep, human space covered a quarter of this galaxy. Lies, Vorthak snapped. Humans were a violent, conquering species that threatened all peaceful civilizations. When they vanished, 7 great species formed the Galactic Coalition to ensure they could never return. We have spent centuries studying their ruins, preparing for this day. What day? Taemin asked, though he was beginning to understand. The day the human scourge tries to rise again. But we are ready for you. The alien ships began moving into attack formation. Taemin could see weapon ports opening along their hulls. These weren't exploration vessels. They were warships, and they meant business. Admiral Vorthak, Taemin said quickly. We don't want to fight. We just want to understand what happened to our people. Your people are gone, and good riddance. The galaxy is peaceful now under Coalition rule. We will not allow the human plague to spread again. The first alien ship fired a warning shot that passed close to the Indomitable Dawn's hull. The human ship's shields flared as they absorbed the energy. So Young, Taemin called to his engineer. How are those weapons coming? Still working on it, Captain, but I've got an idea. Her fingers flew over her console. These aliens have never seen real human military technology. Their scans showed them our hull and basic systems, but not our real capabilities. What do you mean? The Indomitable Dawn wasn't just any human warship. She was the most advanced ship ever built. Her weapons were classified so highly that even our own people didn't know what she could really do. So Young grinned fiercely. "I just need 30 more seconds." Admiral Vorthak's voice came over the communications again. "Human vessel, you have 10 seconds to surrender before we destroy you." "Admiral," Taemin replied calmly, "I'm going to give you one chance to reconsider. We don't want to hurt anyone, but we won't be bullied." 5 seconds, human." "So Young?" Taemin asked quietly. "Ready, Captain." "Fire!" What happened next would be talked about in alien military academies for generations. The indomitable Dawn didn't just shoot at the alien ships. She unleashed weapons that shouldn't have existed. Beams of pure energy that twisted space itself struck 3 of the alien vessels simultaneously. The Coalition ships, which had seemed so powerful moments before, suddenly looked like toys being hit by a giant's hammer. The 3 alien ships didn't explode. They simply stopped working. Their weapons went dead, their engines shut down, and their communications fell silent. They drifted in space like dead metal, completely helpless. The remaining 9 alien ships immediately began firing everything they had at the human vessel. Dozens of energy beams and missile weapons struck the indomitable Dawn's shields, lighting up space like a deadly fireworks display. "Shields holding at 95%, reported So Young cheerfully. "Their weapons are like throwing rocks at a mountain." Admiral Vorthak's face on the screen had gone pale. His scales were now a sickly gray color. "Impossible! Our intelligence said human weapons were primitive." "Your intelligence was 3,000 years out of date," Taemin replied. He turned to So Young. "Disable the rest of their ships. Don't destroy them. Just make them helpless." "With pleasure, Captain." The indomitable Dawn fired again. This time, beams of energy reached out like fingers, touching each of the remaining alien ships gently. But wherever the beams touched, the alien vessels simply stopped working. In less than a minute, the entire Coalition fleet was drifting powerlessly in space. "How?" Admiral Vorthak whispered. "Human technology," Taemin said simply. "Now, Admiral, let's talk like civilized beings. I want to know what happened to my people." Over the next hour, Admiral Vorthak told them the story of the galaxy they had awakened to. After humanity had mysteriously vanished 3,000 years ago, 7 alien species had formed the Galactic Coalition. They had divided up former human space among themselves, taking over human colonies and stripping them of useful technology. The Coalition had spent centuries studying human ruins, trying to understand the weapons and ships that humans had built. What they found had terrified them. Human technology was far more advanced than anything the Coalition species could create. If humans ever returned, they would be unstoppable. So the Coalition had prepared. They had built their entire military around the idea of preventing a human return. They had ships designed specifically to fight human vessels, weapons created to counter human defenses, and strategies developed to deal with human tactics. But all of their preparations had been based on incomplete information. They had never found a ship like the indomitable Dawn, never seen the most advanced human weapons in action. They had prepared to fight the humans they thought they knew, not the humans who had actually existed. "Your coalition sounds like it rules through fear," Dr. Haywan observed. "We maintain peace," Vorthak replied defensively. "The galaxy is stable under our guidance." "Whose guidance?" asked Ki Young. "Do all 7 species have equal say?" Vorthak hesitated. "The Saurian Empire leads the coalition. We are the most experienced in military matters." Taemin understood. The coalition wasn't a partnership of equals. It was an empire ruled by the Saurians, using the threat of human return to keep the other species in line. Classic divide-and-conquer tactics. "I want safe passage to former human space," Taemin declared. "I want to see what's left of our worlds." "I cannot allow that." "Admiral," Taemin said quietly, "you have 12 disabled ships and no way to call for help. I have weapons that make your entire fleet useless. You're not in a position to allow anything." Vorthak's scales turned dark red with anger, but he was smart enough to recognize reality. If I let you go, the Coalition will consider me a traitor. If you don't let us go, you'll never make it home to be called anything. The alien admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. The Coalition Council meets on the world of Nexus Prime. They will want to know about this encounter. Let them know, Taemin said. Tell them that humanity has returned. Tell them we're not the conquering plague they remember, but also tell them that we're not helpless victims they can bully. The indomitable Dawn began moving away from the disabled alien fleet. As they left, Taemin could see other Coalition ships arriving in the distance, coming to help their stranded comrades. They'll spread the word quickly, observed Ki Young. Good, replied Taemin. Let the galaxy know that humans are back, and let them decide for themselves what that means. As the human ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward the ruins of human space, Captain Taemin couldn't help but wonder what they would find there. 3,000 years was a long time. But if the Coalition had been so afraid of human return, maybe some trace of his people still existed. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had awakened, and the age of Coalition dominance was about to face its greatest test. The journey to Sol System took 5 days. Captain Taemin spent most of that time staring out the observation windows, watching familiar star patterns grow larger as they approached humanity's birthplace. Navigator Ki Young had plotted their course using old star charts, hoping the path home hadn't changed too much in 3,000 years. Approaching Sol System now, Captain, Ki Young announced from the bridge. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. Every human knew about Sol System, even if they had never been there. It was where humanity began, where Earth waited with its blue oceans and white clouds. Put it on the main screen, Taemin ordered. The viewing screen flickered to life, showing the yellow star that had warmed humanity's first world. But as they moved deeper into the system, something was terribly wrong. Where Earth should have been blue and green, it was brown and gray. No clouds swirled in its atmosphere. No lights showed where cities had once stood. Dr. Hae-won gasped. What happened to it? Engineer So Young ran quick scans from her station. The atmosphere is all wrong. Oxygen levels are almost zero. The surface temperature is 50 degrees below, freezing. And I'm not detecting any life signs at all. Mars looked even worse. The Red Planet had always been humanity's first major colony, with millions of people living under protective domes. Now those domes were broken, their metal skeletons reaching toward the sky like the ribs of dead giants. The cities that had once bustled with activity were now empty ruins, picked clean by time and scavengers. Take us closer to Earth, Taemin said quietly. As the indomitable Dawn entered Earth's orbit, the full scale of the disaster became clear. The planet's surface was scarred with massive craters, as if it had been bombarded by asteroids. The oceans had boiled away, leaving only dry basins filled with toxic dust. The continents were barely recognizable under layers of ash and debris. Captain, So Young said, her voice shaking slightly, I'm detecting traces of nuclear radiation, lots of it. Whatever happened here, it was catastrophic. Any survivors? Asked Dr. Hae-won hopefully. No life signs anywhere on the planet. Not even bacteria. The bridge fell silent. These 12 people might truly be the last humans in the universe. Their homeworld was dead, poisoned beyond any hope of recovery. But Ki Young suddenly looked up from his navigation console. Wait, I'm getting something from the asteroid belt. There's a signal out there. Coalition ships? Taemin asked, immediately alert. No, Captain. It's human technology. Old human technology, but definitely ours. They changed course toward the asteroid belt, where humanity had once built massive mining stations to harvest metals and rare elements. As they approached, they found something remarkable. Floating among the rocks were dozens of automated mining platforms, still working after 3,000 years. Their fusion reactors hummed with power, their mechanical arms moved with purpose, and their storage bays were full of processed materials. Incredible, breathed So Young. These stations were built to last, but 3,000 years? That's beyond impressive. Taemin ordered a survey team to investigate one of the larger stations. Dr. Hae-won led the team, along with 2 junior officers and So Young. They took a small shuttle from the indomitable Dawn and docked with the mining platform. Inside, the station was exactly as human engineers had left it millennia ago. Clean corridors, working computers, and maintenance robots that still followed their ancient programming. But most importantly, there were data storage units that had been collecting information for thousands of years. Dr. Hae-won connected her portable computer to the station's main database. "I'm finding records going back to the final days," she reported over the communication link. "It looks like there was a massive evacuation." "Evacuation from what?" Taemin asked. "I'm not sure yet. The records are fragmented. But it mentions something called the Great Departure. People were loading onto ships by the millions, heading somewhere called the New Frontier." So Young had found something else interesting. In the station's engineering section, she discovered blueprints for technologies that were advanced even by the standards she remembered. Weapons that could tear apart space itself, engines that moved faster than light without using traditional jump drives, and shields that could absorb the energy of entire suns. "Captain," she called excitedly, "you need to see this. The humans who lived here weren't just mining asteroids, they were building something big." Meanwhile, Ki Young had been scanning the outer edges of the solar system. "Captain, I'm detecting artificial structures near Pluto. They're huge, and they're definitely human-made." "How huge?" "Each one is bigger than our ship, and there are dozens of them." As the indomitable Dawn moved toward the outer system, they found the remains of what had once been humanity's greatest construction project. Massive space stations orbited the distant dwarf planet, their hulls dark and cold. But unlike Earth and Mars, these stations hadn't been destroyed. They had been abandoned, left behind when their crews departed for unknown destinations. Dr. Hae-won's team found more data aboard these outer stations. The records painted a picture of humanity's final years in the Sol system. There had been no war, no alien invasion, no natural disaster. Instead, humanity had made a choice. "They left voluntarily," Dr. Hae-won reported, her voice filled with wonder. "The records talk about new discoveries, new technologies that made it possible to travel between galaxies. Humanity didn't die out, they graduated." "Graduated to what?" asked Taemin. "To something bigger. The records mention ascension, protocols, and transgalactic migration. It sounds like they found a way to move beyond this galaxy entirely." So Young had been studying the abandoned station's technology. "Captain, these outer stations weren't just research facilities. They were gateways. Look at these power readings. Even after 3,000 years, there are still energy signatures. That suggests portal technology." "Portals to where?" "Other galaxies. The Andromeda Galaxy is mentioned several times in the technical manuals." As they explored more of the stations, a clearer picture emerged. Humanity had reached a point in their development where the Milky Way galaxy was no longer big enough for them. They had discovered how to travel between galaxies as easily as they once traveled between planets. So they had packed up their entire civilization and moved on to bigger challenges. But they hadn't left everything behind. The automated mining stations, the data storage facilities, and the gateway stations had all been left running, maintained by artificial intelligences that never got tired or forgot their duties. It was as if humanity had expected someone to return someday. "They knew," whispered Ki Young as he studied the navigation logs. "They knew that some humans might be left behind in stasis. These stations weren't just abandoned. They were left as a message." The message was clear in the technical manuals and historical records they found. Humanity had evolved beyond the need for a single galaxy, but they hadn't forgotten their origins. The stations contained everything that returning humans would need: raw materials, advanced technology blueprints, and most importantly, the coordinates for following humanity's path to the stars. But as they were exploring the outer stations, So Young's sensors detected something alarming. "Captain, we've got company. Big company." Through the main viewing screen, they could see lights approaching from the direction of interstellar space. "Lots of lights, moving in perfect formation." "Coalition fleet?" asked Tae-min. "Has to be. I count over 50 ships and they're all heading straight for us." Ki-young checked his long-range scanners. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, Captain. Multiple languages, but the translation software is picking up the main message: surrender immediately or be destroyed." Dr. Hae-won and her team quickly returned to the indomitable Dawn with as much data as they could carry. As their shuttle docked, the approaching coalition fleet was already visible to the naked eye. These weren't the sleek saurian ships they had faced before. This fleet was a mixture of vessels from all 7 coalition species, and they had come prepared for war. "So Young, what's our status?" Tae-min asked as he returned to the bridge. "Main weapons are now fully operational, Captain. Shields are at maximum power. But 50 ships is a lot, even for us. Any word from Admiral Vorthak?" "He's leading the fleet, and Captain, he's not interested in talking this time." The coalition fleet spread out in attack formation, surrounding the Sol system. There was no escape route, no way to run. They had come to destroy the last humans, and they meant to finish the job. But Captain Tae-min looked around at his crew and felt something he hadn't felt since waking up: hope. They had found the truth about humanity's fate. His people hadn't died. They had grown beyond what anyone could imagine, and they had left behind the tools that their descendants would need. "So Young," he said calmly, "remember those advanced weapon blueprints you found?" "Yes, Captain." "How long would it take to implement them?" She grinned fiercely. "For a full installation, about a week. But for a quick and dirty battlefield modification, give me 10 minutes. "You have 5. The coalition fleet was closing in, ready to end humanity's story once and for all. But they had made one crucial mistake. They thought they were facing the last desperate survivors of a dead race. They had no idea they were about to face the children of humanity's greatest achievement. On the coalition capital world of Nexus Prime, emergency sirens wailed through the towering crystal spires that housed the galactic government. The 7-species council had been meeting for 18 straight hours, and tempers were running higher than anyone could remember. Historian General Zeftos of the Crystalline Collective stood at the center of the great council chamber, his transparent body pulsing with nervous energy. Around him, representatives from the other 6 coalition species argued loudly in their native languages, their translation devices struggling to keep up with the rapid-fire discussions. "Order!" shouted Supreme Chancellor Vordak, the massive, insectoid leader whose compound eyes could see every member of the council simultaneously. "We must have order." The chamber gradually quieted, though the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a blade. Every representative had received the same terrifying report from Admiral Vorthak's encounter in the Outer Rim. A human ship had appeared. A single human vessel had disabled an entire Saurian fleet without breaking their own shields. "The situation is worse than we feared," Zeftos began, his crystalline voice ringing clearly through the chamber. "I have spent the last day reviewing our classified archives about humanity's previous reign in this galaxy." He activated the great holographic display that dominated the center of the council chamber. Images of human ships, human cities, and human technology filled the air above their heads. But these weren't the primitive vessels the coalition had expected to face someday. These were machines of incredible power and beauty. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored collective beings," Zeftos continued, "we have been preparing for the wrong enemy." A murmur of concern rippled through the assembled representatives. Chancellor Vordak's antennae twitched nervously. Explain. Our military preparations have been based on incomplete data. We found human ruins, yes. We studied human technology, certainly. But we never found their most advanced ships, their most powerful weapons, or their most sophisticated defenses. The holographic display changed, showing technical readouts from Admiral Vorthak's encounter. The energy signatures from the human ship's weapons were unlike anything in Coalition databases. The vessel that disabled our fleet used weapons that manipulate space-time itself, Zeftos explained. Their defensive shields absorbed everything our ships could throw at them without even flickering, and according to our scans, they were operating on minimal power. Impossible! Growled General Mordak of the insectoid hives, his mandibles clicking angrily. No species could develop such technology. Humans did, Zeftos replied simply. And that's not the worst part. He changed the display again, showing archaeological data from former human worlds. We always wondered why human civilization vanished so suddenly. Their colonies went silent all at once, their ships stopped flying, their communications ended. We assumed they had been destroyed by some catastrophe. They weren't? Asked Ambassador Lilmoth of the Aquatic Federation, her gills fluttering with nervousness. No. They left. Voluntarily. Our latest intelligence suggests they achieved technological transcendence and departed for other galaxies. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions in a dozen languages, their translation devices creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Chancellor Vordak had to bang his ceremonial staff 3 times before order was restored. Are you saying, Vordak asked slowly, that humanity is still out there, in other galaxies? That is exactly what I'm saying. And if one of their ships has returned, others may follow. The implications hit the council like a physical blow. For 3,000 years, the Coalition had built their entire civilization on the foundation of human absence. They had divided up human space, studied human technology, and used the fear of human return to justify their authoritarian rule over dozens of smaller species. But their preparations had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding. They had prepared to fight the humans they remembered, not the humans who had actually existed. How many ships did they have? Asked Delegate Chintar of the Gaseous Nebula Collective. Zeftos checked his records. Conservative estimates suggest they possessed over 10 million vessels when they departed. But that was 3,000 years ago. They've had time to build more. 10 million? Vordak's compound eyes went wide with horror. And those are just the ships we know about. There were always rumors of human projects in deep space, secret facilities that we never found. General Mordak rose from his seat, his 6 arms gesturing aggressively. Then we strike now. We mobilize every ship in Coalition space and destroy this human vessel before it can call for reinforcements. With what? Zeftos asked quietly. Our most powerful fleet couldn't scratch their shields. Their weakest weapons disabled our strongest ships. What makes you think more of the same will work? Numbers, Mordak insisted. We have over 50,000 ships spread across Coalition. Space, even human technology has limits. Does it? Zeftos brought up another display, showing energy readings from the human encounter. This single ship generated more power than our entire home fleet. Their weapons had enough force to crack a planet, and according to our analysis, they were holding back. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed this information. They had spent centuries convinced of their own strength, secure in their dominance over the galaxy. Now they were being told that a single enemy ship could potentially destroy their entire civilization. Chancellor Vordak spoke for all of them. What do you recommend? Negotiation, Zeftos replied immediately. We cannot defeat them militarily. Our only hope is to convince them that we are not their enemies. Negotiate with humans? Snarled Mordak. They are a plague species. They conquered everything they touched. They conquered us easily enough when they were primitive, Zeftos pointed out. What do you think they can do now that they've had 3,000 years to advance? The debate that followed would later be called the most important discussion in coalition history. Some representatives, led by General Mordak, insisted that military action was the only option. They argued that showing weakness to humanity would invite conquest and slavery. Others, including several of the smaller coalition members, quietly suggested that maybe humanity's return wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The coalition's rule had become increasingly oppressive over the centuries, with the stronger species dominating the weaker ones. But it was Ambassador Lilmoth who asked the most important question. What if they're not here to conquer us? What if they just want their old territory back? Their old territory? Vordak laughed bitterly. Their old territory includes half the coalition's most important worlds. Then maybe we should give it back, Lilmoth replied quietly. The chamber erupted again, but this time the arguments were different. For the first time in coalition history, some members were openly questioning whether their current system was worth defending. Meanwhile, deep in the coalition's intelligence networks, other discussions were taking place. Admiral Vorthak, still smarting from his defeat at the hands of the human ship, was gathering like-minded military officers. They didn't care what the politicians decided. They had spent their entire careers preparing to fight humanity, and they weren't going to back down now. But even among the military, there were doubts. The technical reports from Vorthak's encounter made it clear that conventional tactics would be useless against human technology. Some officers began suggesting that it might be time to consider alternatives to direct confrontation. As the emergency session continued into its second day, news arrived that changed everything. The human ship had been detected in the Sol system, apparently investigating the ruins of their homeworld. A massive coalition fleet had been dispatched to destroy them before they could learn too much about what had happened to their people. "This is our chance," declared General Mordak. "If we can destroy them in their moment of grief and confusion, we can end this threat before it grows." But Zeftos shook his head sadly. "You're making the same mistake we've been making for 3,000 years. You're assuming they think like us." "What do you mean?" "Humans don't mourn like we do. They don't despair like we do. When they find tragedy, they don't collapse. They get angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous force in the universe." As if to prove his point, reports began arriving from the Sol system. The coalition fleet had found the human ship exactly where intelligence had predicted. But the engagement wasn't going as planned. The human vessel wasn't running or hiding. Instead, it was systematically dismantling coalition ships with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Admiral Vorthak's report spoke of beams that ignored shields entirely, of defensive systems that turned enemy fire into harmless light, and of maneuvers that made coalition ships look like they were standing still. "How many ships have we lost?" Chancellor Vordak asked grimly. 17 destroyed, 23 disabled, and the rest are falling back," came the reply. "Out of 50 ships?" "The human vessel appears to be toying with our fleet. They could have destroyed everything if they wanted to." In the Great Council chamber, the representatives sat in stunned silence. Their worst fears were coming true. Humanity had returned, and they were everything the coalition had been afraid of and more. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the realization that this was just the beginning. Somewhere out in the vast darkness between galaxies, the rest of humanity was waiting. And now they knew that their old home had been claimed by others. The age of coalition dominance was ending, and none of them knew what would take its place. The coalition fleet that had come to destroy the indomitable Dawn was now scattered across the Sol system like broken toys. 17 ships had been completely destroyed, their hulls torn apart by weapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics. 23 more drifted powerlessly through space, their crews alive but their vessels dead. The remaining ships had fled back to coalition space, carrying terrifying reports of human capabilities. Captain Taemin stood on his bridge, watching the wreckage float past his ship. He felt no joy in the victory. These alien beings had families, homes, dreams, just like humans did. But they had come here to commit genocide, and he couldn't allow that. "Captain," Engineer So Young called from her station, "I'm picking up long-range communications from the fleeing ships. They're calling for reinforcements." "How many reinforcements?" "From what I can decode, it sounds like they're mobilizing everything. Every ship in Coalition space is being recalled for something called Operation Final Silence." Navigator Key Young looked up from his console with concern. "That doesn't sound good." "It's not supposed to," Tae-min replied grimly. "They're going to try to hunt us down with overwhelming numbers." Dr. Hae-won had been studying the data they'd recovered from the Sol system facilities. "Captain, I think I know why they're so desperate. According to these records, humanity controlled or had peaceful relations with over 200 different species when we left this galaxy. The Coalition has been oppressing most of those species for 3,000 years, meaning, if word gets out that humanity has returned, it could trigger rebellions across half the galaxy. The Coalition isn't just afraid of us. They're afraid of losing control entirely." Over the next several days, the truth of Dr. Hae-won's words became clear. As news of the human ship spread through Coalition space, something unexpected began happening. Species that had been conquered or dominated by the Coalition started asking questions. If humans were back, what did that mean for them? On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the native rock-born people stopped working in the Coalition's deep-core extraction facilities. They remembered the old stories their grandparents told about the time before the Coalition, when humans had traded fairly with them instead of enslaving them. In the Vega system, the peaceful gardener species began broadcasting old human friendship, treaties that the Coalition had declared null and void. They asked publicly why these agreements couldn't be honored again. Most dangerous of all, several species began trying to contact the human ship directly, sending messages of welcome and requests for protection from Coalition oppression. Admiral Vorthak, now leading the largest military operation in Coalition history, was losing ships faster than he could deploy them, but not to human weapons, to desertion. Crews from the subjugated species were abandoning their posts, refusing to fight against humanity's return. "This is intolerable," General Mordak raged during an emergency military briefing. "We're losing entire fleets without the humans firing a shot." "Maybe that tells us something," suggested Admiral Kelnara of the Aquatic Federation quietly. "Maybe the species we've been protecting don't want our protection anymore." "Traitor," Mordak hissed, his mandibles clicking angrily. But Admiral Vorthak was thinking tactically. "The human ship has become a symbol. As long as it exists, it will inspire rebellion. We have to destroy it before the situation gets worse." "How?" asked Kelnara. "They've proven our weapons are useless against them." "Then we use different weapons," Vorthak replied coldly. Meanwhile, the indomitable Dawn had become something the Coalition had never prepared for. A ghost ship. Engineer So Young had been working around the clock to restore ancient human stealth, technology found in the Sol system archives. The massive warship could now appear and disappear seemingly at will, striking Coalition targets and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. But they weren't just attacking randomly. Captain Tae-min had developed a careful strategy based on the intelligence they'd gathered about Coalition operations. "We hit their supply lines first," he explained to his crew during a planning session. "No military can function without fuel, food, and ammunition." "What about civilian casualties?" asked Dr. Hae-won, ever concerned about innocent lives. "We avoid them completely. Our targets are military supply depots, automated cargo ships, and communication relays. No attacks on populated worlds or civilian vessels." Their first major strike came at the Centauri logistics hub, where the Coalition stored fuel and supplies for 3 entire fleet groups. The indomitable Dawn appeared out of nowhere, disabled the defense platforms with surgical precision, and then did something unexpected. They broadcast a message to the facility's workers. "Attention all personnel," Captain Tae-min's voice echoed through the space station. You have 1 hour to evacuate. We're going to destroy this military facility, but we have no wish to harm civilians. The coalition military officers tried to force the workers to stay at their posts, claiming it was a human trick. But the workers had heard the stories their grandparents told about human honor and fair dealing. They evacuated in an orderly fashion, leaving the coalition officers alone on their doomed station. When the indomitable Dawn destroyed the facility an hour later, not a single civilian was harmed. The message spread quickly through coalition space. Humans kept their word. This pattern repeated across dozens of systems. The human ship would appear, give civilians time to evacuate, then destroy military targets with devastating efficiency. They rescued coalition prisoners from species that had been enslaved, liberated research stations where alien scientists were being forced to develop anti-human weapons, and even provided medical aid to coalition worlds suffering from natural disasters. "They're not acting like conquerors," Admiral Kelnara observed during another strategy meeting. "They're acting like, well, like the humans from the old stories." "What old stories?" demanded Mordak. "The ones my people tell about the time before the coalition. Humans were tough negotiators and fierce warriors, but they were also fair dealers and reliable allies." "Propaganda," Mordak snapped. But privately, many coalition officers were beginning to wonder if their entire understanding of humanity had been wrong. The turning point came when the indomitable Dawn encountered a coalition research vessel that was attacking a refugee convoy. The ship was experimenting with new weapons designed specifically to kill humans, testing them on helpless civilians from a species that had once been humanity's allies. Captain Taemin's response was swift and terrible. The indomitable Dawn didn't just destroy the research vessel. They tore it apart piece by piece, making sure every coalition ship in the system could see what happened to those who murdered innocents. Then they escorted the refugee convoy to safety, providing food, medical supplies, and protection until the civilians could reach a safe haven. Dr. Hae-won had been working with the refugees, many of whom remembered stories about humanity from their elders. "Captain," she reported, "these people are asking if we're here to restore the old alliances." "What did you tell them?" "That we're here to find out what happened to our people and to stop anyone from committing genocide. But they want to know if humanity will protect them like in the old days." Taemin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of decisions. "Tell them that humanity never abandoned our friends. We just went away for a while." As word of this promise spread, something remarkable happened. Species across coalition space began actively helping the human ship. They provided intelligence about coalition fleet movements, warned of ambush attempts, and even began conducting their own resistance operations. Navigator Ki Young was tracking these developments with growing amazement. "Captain, we're not fighting the coalition alone anymore. I'm detecting sabotage operations in 17 systems, work slowdowns in over 30 colonial facilities, and at least 12 species have formally requested human protection." "It's working," breathed So Young. "They're more afraid of losing control than they are of our weapons." But Admiral Vorthak wasn't giving up. Deep in coalition space, he was preparing his most desperate gambit yet. If conventional weapons couldn't destroy the human ship, he would use unconventional ones. "Project Stellar Lance is ready for deployment," he reported to the coalition leadership. "That weapon was banned by our own laws," protested Chancellor Vordak. "Desperate times require desperate measures," Vorthak replied coldly. "The Stellar Lance can crack open a star and destroy an entire solar system. Even human technology can't protect against the explosion of a sun." "You're talking about genocide on a galactic scale," whispered Ambassador Lil Moth. "I'm talking about survival," Vorthak snapped. "Either we destroy them, or they destroy everything we've built." As the coalition prepared their ultimate weapon, the indomitable Dawn continued its campaign of liberation. But Captain Tamin was beginning to realize that their success was creating its own problems. The more species that rallied to humanity's banner, the more desperate the coalition became. And desperate enemies were often the most dangerous. Navigator Kai Young detected the coalition's massive fleet movements first. "Captain, they're not chasing us anymore. They're heading toward the galactic core." "Why there?" Kai Young checked his readings again, his face growing pale. "According to these star charts from the Sol system, that's where humanity's most important facility was located, a place called the Forge." Tamin felt a chill run down his spine. If the coalition was heading there, it could only mean one thing. They had found humanity's greatest secret. The real war was about to begin. "Impossible! Humans are extinct!" "Do we look extinct to you, Admiral?" On the coalition command ship, panic was spreading through the crew. Their instruments were going crazy trying to count the human vessels, and their weapons officers were reporting that they couldn't get target locks on ships that seemed to phase in and out of normal space. "Deploy the Stellar Lance," Vorthak ordered desperately. The massive weapon platform that the coalition had brought began charging its star-killing weapon. It was designed to destabilize the core of a sun, causing it to explode and destroy everything in the system. But Jinnah had been monitoring their communications. "Captain, they are preparing to destroy this system's star. Can you stop them? We can do better than that." From the forge came a beam of pure energy, but it wasn't aimed at the coalition fleet. Instead, it struck the charging weapon platform and did something impossible. It converted the destructive energy into harmless light, creating a rainbow aurora that filled the entire system. "Your weapon has been neutralized," Jinnah announced to the coalition fleet. "But more importantly, it has been studied, analyzed, and countered. We now know how to protect every star in this galaxy from similar weapons." The message was clear. Humanity's technology was so advanced that they could turn the coalition's most powerful weapons into pretty light shows. Chancellor Vordak's voice came over the communications, sounding tired and defeated. "What do you want from us?" It was then that the true scope of humanity's return became clear. Ships began emerging from all 12 forge stations throughout the galaxy. Species that had been oppressed by the coalition for 3,000 years found human vessels appearing in their systems, offering protection and friendship. But there was no conquest, no revenge, no repetition of the coalition's harsh rule. Instead, human diplomats began broadcasting a simple message across all frequencies. "To all species of this galaxy, humanity has returned not as conquerors but as neighbors. We seek to restore the alliances of old, to protect the weak, and to build a better future for all. The age of fear is over. The age of cooperation begins now." Captain Tamin found himself standing beside Jinnah, watching as the coalition fleet slowly powered down their weapons and began broadcasting surrender signals. "Is it really over?" he asked. "This part is," Jinnah replied with a smile. "But Captain, this isn't an ending. It's a beginning. Humanity is home, and the galaxy will never be the same." As the first human ships began landing on worlds they had left 3,000 years ago, the galaxy fell silent, not in fear, but in wonder. The age of the Galactic Coalition was ending, and the age of true galactic civilization was about to begin. The forge hung in space like a sleeping giant. The massive station was 10 times larger than any coalition facility, its dark hull covered in geometric patterns that hurt alien eyes to look at directly. It had been drifting in the galactic core for 3,000 years, hidden among the dense star clusters where few ships dared to travel. Captain Tamin stood on the bridge of the indomitable dawn, staring at humanity's greatest achievement. The station was so large that it had its own gravitational field, and its surface was dotted with docking bays that could hold ships the size of cities. "My God," whispered Dr. Haywan. "How did we ever build something like that?" Engineer So Young. was running every scan she could think of. Captain, this station is still active. I'm reading massive power signatures from the core, and there are automated systems working throughout the structure. Any signs of life? Not biological life, but there are definitely artificial intelligences operating inside. Lots of them. Navigator. Kai Young had been tracking the Coalition fleet that was pursuing them. Captain, Admiral Vorthak's forces will be here in 6 hours. I count over 300 ships, including some kind of massive weapon platform I've never seen before. Taemin made his decision quickly. Dock with the station. We need to find out what humanity left for us. The indomitable dawn approached one of the smaller docking bays, and immediately the station began responding. Ancient systems came online, guiding lights illuminated their path, and the docking bay doors opened smoothly, despite having been sealed for millennia. As soon as they were inside, Taemin could feel the difference. The artificial gravity was perfect, the air was clean and fresh, and there was a subtle humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. This wasn't just a space station, it was a living machine. "Welcome home," said a warm female voice from hidden speakers. "I have been waiting for you." The crew looked around nervously. The voice sounded completely human, but they were supposed to be the last humans in the galaxy. "Who are you?" Taemin asked. "I am the custodian of the forge. I was created by your people to maintain this facility until their return. You may call me Jinnah." A holographic figure appeared before them, a middle-aged Korean woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked completely real, down to the slight wrinkles around her eyes and the way her hair moved in the stations. Artificial breeze. "You're an artificial intelligence," Dr. Haewon observed. "I am. But I am also much more than that. I carry within me the memories, knowledge, and experiences of 10,000 human volunteers who helped create this facility. In a very real sense, I am humanity's collective consciousness." Jinnah led them deeper into the station, through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever. The walls were lined with windows that showed vast construction bays filled with ships, in various stages of completion. Some vessels were familiar human designs, while others looked like nothing any of them had ever imagined. "What is this place?" asked So Young, her engineer's mind trying to comprehend the scale of what she was seeing. "The forge was humanity's final gift to themselves," Jinnah explained. "When your people achieved transgalactic travel, they knew that some humans might be left behind. So they built this facility to continue their work, to prepare for their eventual return." "Continue what work?" Jinnah gestured to the construction bays around them. "Building the future. Every ship you see here has been designed and constructed over the past 3,000 years. We have incorporated new technologies, solved old problems, and prepared for challenges that haven't even occurred yet." They entered a vast central chamber where dozens of human ships floated in perfect formation. These weren't the familiar designs from the old days. These were sleek, beautiful vessels that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "How many ships?" Taemin asked, though he was almost afraid to hear the answer. "Currently in this facility? Approximately 5,000 vessels of various sizes. But Captain, this is only one of 12 forge stations scattered throughout the galaxy." 12? So Young gasped. "Your people were very thorough. They wanted to ensure that when humanity returned, you would have everything you needed to reclaim your place among the stars." Ki Young had been studying the tactical displays. "Jinnah, can these ships fight?" "They can do much more than fight, Navigator Ki Young. But yes, if combat is necessary, they are equipped with the most advanced weapons and defenses ever created." "Then we need them now," Taemin said urgently. "The Coalition is coming with their entire fleet. They mean to destroy this place and finish what they started 3,000 years ago." Jinnah's expression grew serious. "I am aware of the approaching fleet. I have been monitoring Coalition communications for centuries, waiting for this moment. Can you activate the ships?" "The ships have been active for weeks, Captain. I began awakening them the moment sensors detected your arrival in this galaxy. But there is something else you need to understand. Jinnah led them to another viewing chamber, this one overlooking what looked like a massive portal ring. The structure was easily a kilometer in diameter, and it pulsed with energies that made the air itself seem to sing. "What is that?" Dr. Haywan asked. "A transgalactic gateway. Your people didn't just leave this galaxy, Captain. They built a network of gateways connecting this galaxy to Andromeda, to the Magellanic Clouds, and to dozens of other galaxies beyond. Are you saying humanity never really left, Captain Taman? They just expanded, and they have been watching." As if summoned by her words, the great portal began to activate. Energies swirled within the ring, and space itself seemed to bend and twist. Then, emerging from the swirling vortex, came ships. But these weren't the familiar human vessels from 3,000 years ago. These were something new, sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to be grown rather than built. They moved through space with a grace that defied physics, and their hulls shimmered with colors that had no names. "The first fleet of the Andromeda expedition," Jinnah announced calmly. 50,000 ships, carrying the descendants of humanity's greatest explorers. More portals opened throughout the system. Ships began emerging in numbers that boggled the mind. Hundreds of thousands of vessels representing 3 millennia of human expansion across multiple galaxies. But these weren't conquest fleets. They were families coming home. Captain Taman stared in wonder at the impossible sight. "How many people?" "Approximately 2 billion humans, Captain. They have been preparing for this return ever since they learned of your awakening." The Coalition fleet, when it finally arrived, found itself facing something beyond their worst nightmares. The 300 ships that Admiral Vorthak had considered overwhelming were now outnumbered by thousands. To one, human vessels filled the space around the forge like a cloud of luminous stars. Admiral Vorthak opened communications immediately, his voice shaking with barely controlled panic. "Human vessels, this is Admiral Vorthak of the Galactic Coalition. You are in violation of our space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." It was Captain Taman who answered, his voice broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "Admiral, this was human space long before your coalition existed. We are not invading while we are coming home,"